You are listening to Exploring Sacred with your host, Denise Iwana Francisco, on the Temple Within Radio and Digital Media Network, giving voice to the sacred.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Exploring Sacred. Welcome to a brand new day in your life. Oh, it takes just a moment to breathe in fresh oxygen, fresh intelligence from the universe into your body, into your lungs, into your consciousness. So I invite you all to join me in taking a great big deep breath and a great big exhalation, just in case you haven't done so yet today, and to bring yourself mindfully into the present moment. It's amazing how we can forget to breathe, how we can forget to remain in the present moment, neither too far in the past, not worrying too much about the future, but being fully present in our body in this moment that we have been given. Taking a look around and observing all of the blessings in our lives and having a moment of gratitude for any moment in our lives. And that's kind of the beginning of today's show. The brightest lights are sometimes called to shine in the darkest of places. And why is that? We're going to talk about that today. And as we get started, I'm going to post a great big welcome to everybody here in the chat room. Hey, Kelly Spencer, talking about blessings in my life. She's a great big one. Blessing in my life. And I am going to go ahead and post the link in Exploring Sacred. If you're not yet somebody who interacts with my page, Exploring Sacred, please find me there on Facebook. Okay. Thanks for posting those photos of Lucy and Hank this morning, Kelly. Talk about a couple of blessings. That made me smile from ear to ear. Oh my goodness. Little sweethearts. Okay, there we are. So as you are filing into the chat room, please do know that I welcome questions and I welcome thoughts, interaction, and your thoughts, your experiences in life about finding yourself in the darkest times, in the darkest places, and wondering, how did I get here? Why am I here? Am I ever going to get out? And what you may or may not have learned from being in that experience. That's kind of the onus of today. All right. Okay, here we go. A lot of times in my work, in my counseling work, I find myself seated with people who are either fully ensconced in the dark night of the soul, as I call it, or feeling as though they're heading into the dark night of the soul, they're on the precipice of it, or they find that they've made their way through the dark night and they're no longer the same person, which comes with its own sorts of ramifications and changes and undulations and mind bogglements. I happen to believe that it's the darkest times, the darkest places, that teach us really the most about ourselves, what we're made of, what we're capable of. And I also find that it's in the lightest of times, the brightest of times, that we learn the most about ourselves. Because who are we then, after we've been shown the light, after our light has been honed? When we've come out of the other end of things, who are we then? And I believe that it's when we're living in the brightest of brights and the lightest of lights that we really show who it is that we've become. Perhaps we've become more compassionate, Perhaps we've become more giving. Perhaps we've become more nurturing to ourselves, or perhaps to other people. And it's easy in the brightest of times and the lightest of times to become very comfortable, perhaps to rest on our laurels. And so while I believe that the darkest of times, the dark night of the soul, will show us what we're made of, what we're capable of. It will hone us, it will refine us. But the point of it all is, what are we going to do after that happens? Are we going to walk the walk that we've been led to walk through? Because after we've walked the walk through the dark night of the soul and we come out into the light of day, the cycle does not end. It's what we do with what we learned in the darkest of the dark and we bring into the lightest of the light that brings us to the next. And if we choose to do nothing about what we've learned in the soil of our soul's growth, if we do nothing with that, the next may never come, and that's fine. The path may never extend, and that's fine. It's what we do with what we grew in that dark soil that leads us to the next. And it also helps prepare us for the next. I happen to believe that, the school of life is always going. And some semesters have a little bit of time, more time between them than other semesters in the school of life. And some are very rapid fire, one right after the other. But I hope, at least for myself, that whenever I've been placed in situations that have either brought me to my knees or feel as though they've nearly broken me, and I know that you can all understand this, that what I've learned in those places helps me to grow, helps me to become more of what I came here to be. Our light is honed in the darkness. And I always quote Lori Bruno when I asked her, does it ever get any easier, Lori? I mean, she's the hereditary high priestess out in Salem, Massachusetts. She's, I think, 78 years old now. And when I asked her that question years ago, because she is one of the brightest lights I've ever met in my life, Lori, does it ever get any easier? And she looked at me and she said, no, it doesn't get any easier. And she started to laugh in this amazing laugh that Lori Bruno has. She said, you have to remember, my dear, that the degree to which we wield the light will always be matched by that same degree of darkness in order for our light to grow even brighter. That's the rub. That's the rub that polishes. That's what the Buddha was talking about or teaching about, right? There aren't any quotes from the Buddha around, right? But his followers and devotees have passed along orally the teachings of the Buddha, and one of them is about polishing the mirror of the soul. Well, unless you have a rag to polish that mirror or you have a rub to rub up against it, the mirror just continues to get dingy over time. It takes that rub to polish off the residue to get to the next layer, to keep it shiny. And so those rubs in our life along the soul's path, I believe, come in many ways. They come in many forms. Sometimes they come in the form of illness. Sometimes they come in the form of death, near death, catastrophic happenings, right? Walking through doors that perhaps should have stayed closed, but we went through them anyway. Walking through doors that we were intended to walk through that are part of our growth pattern, but finding ourselves sometimes in a place where we wonder, well, where did everybody go? Where did everybody go? I'm supposed to, at the very least, have a guardian angel. And I'm not detecting anything angelic in my circumstances right now. Where did my angel go? Where did God go? Where did my family go? Where did my friends go? We've all been through those times. I think pretty much. There may be a few people that have not ever experienced what I'm talking about right now, what we're sharing this morning. But where did my angels go? Where did the creator of all things go while I'm sitting here in the middle of a great big catastrophic mess in my life, in the middle of heartbreak? I have a very dear friend this morning whose son is going through cancer surgery today. And so for the past week, I've been in constant contact with her, as a mother walking your child through cancer, and today cancer surgery. That's a dark night. And when she got a hold of me and she said, Dee, I'm having a really hard time right now. This is what's happening. Helping somebody through the diagnosis of cancer, helping her through her son's surgery that's going on today. And while I can't do it for her, I can be there with her. But there are times when it seems as though there's no one around. And why is that? How does that happen? I believe in my 56 years of being on this earth plane, I happen to believe through experience that sometimes we're just supposed to do it on our own, even though we're not really doing it on our own. But sometimes our guides in spirit, our guardians, our totems, our guardian angels, the creator of all things, Yeshua himself, they have to love us enough in the understanding that our soul is going through a pattern of growth. They have to love us enough to let us do it on our own, to watch lovingly from where they happen to be. Those of us that are parents, aunties, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, we understand that concept, loving somebody enough to let them grow up, to let them get on their own 2 feet, and it's not easy. In my life, I always think to myself, that's what's going on right now. My angels must love me a whole lot. My guides must love me. Oh my goodness, they really love me right now because I don't see any hint of them around me. So this must be a really big growth pattern that I'm going through. I must be really on the precipice, on the tip of finding some pretty amazing insights about this life, about me and my role in this life, and the role of others in my life. And, we can go through this fully when we are in the company of other physical people. We can feel completely alone in our journey, even if we are surrounded by people living in our home, people in our office, right? People in our family. Good morning, Lady Hawk. Good to see you in the house this morning. We can feel absolutely alone on the soul journey, even if we've got a dozen people living in our house with us, right? That's not what I'm talking about. It's a journey that we take within that only we can take. As St. John of the Cross said, with nothing but the light of my soul to guide me, I entered into the dark night. With nothing but the light of my soul to guide me, I entered into the dark night. And sometimes it is the light of our soul, our Patronus, right? Our Patronus, as they say in Harry Potter world, that guides us. And that's how it's supposed to be. We understand then the light, the depth, the breadth, and the wattage of our soul. Kelly is saying, yes, I believe those dark moments are when biggest growth happens. It is when Creator and I have the deepest conversations. But because I've learned over the years, this is when my spirit is being heightened. Yes, my purpose is coming to the surface, and oh, how painful it can be. Growth pains are excruciating at times. Great comment, Kelly. Thank you. Hey, Jill Verlee. Good to see you in the house, too. I'm glad you're able to listen today, too. There's a bright light out there in the world of service animals. Animals of service. One of my favorite subjects, animals. Sometimes all we have by our side going through this are our four-leggeds and our furry ones and our feathered ones that help us through the dark night. The brightest lights are called to shine in the darkest places because the greatest teachers walk through the greatest fires. Those are two sayings and quotes that I use over and again because I think that they're applicable to everybody. The greatest teachers walk through the greatest fires. That's how we are forged. And that's how I believe, how we come to understand, as Kelly is saying, through life's experiences, that there is so much more that we've come here to understand about ourselves, about the beauty of life, about our interactions in life. And yes, it is painful, because in the pain of growth, you know, when we talk about kids going through growing pains, my cat, Dominic, is growing right now at a very rapid rate. And so he's devouring cat food. It's just incredible around this house. He is growing like into a full-blown leopard, I'm pretty sure here. And so we go through a lot of food. And I like allegories for myself. So I think to myself, when we're going through a growth spurt, we're looking for food for the soul. And we're feeding ourselves, we're nourishing ourselves, and we're growing, our soul is growing, and it can be painful because we're no longer able to fit in, you know, to our old jeans, as they say, right? Boy, I look back at my high school jeans, size 5, size 2, and I think, oh, goodness. That was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. And would I ever want to be back at that stage in my life? The answer to that is no. We outgrow our clothing. In other words, we outgrow our present cloaks. We outgrow perhaps our friends, perhaps our family. We outgrow old, outdated belief systems, old teachings, perhaps what we were taught to believe. We outgrow it in these growth spurts, and that's where the pain comes in. Because when we outgrow an old belief system, an old way of thinking, we outgrow what we were taught to believe about ourselves, perhaps in childhood. We outgrow perhaps our religion or our spiritual path, and maybe we're brought to another religion or another spiritual path, or none at all. And in the doing so, there are times when our family members may not understand. Our friends may not understand. Our coworkers, we may not even fully understand until we find ourselves in that present moment that's coming to us. And there's loss, there's grieving. I believe that when we move away from a friendship or a family relationship or even a colleague at work, there can be deep mourning in that. Mourning the loss of what was juxtaposed against, but who am I becoming, and do I stop becoming in order for their comfort to be fulfilled? A lot of people forget to grow or neglect to grow, right? Or recede in their growth for the comfort of others around them. Jill, Kelly, Lady Hawk, will you weigh in on that in the chat room? Have you ever felt as though you just needed to remain status quo even though your soul was calling you forward for the comfort of those around you? Because that's a big one right there. Right? Sometimes we can think, I went through all of that for what? For what? The greatest teachers are called to walk through the greatest fires. The soul's journey, the spiritual journey, is not for ninnies. I believe that. It takes courage to experience this human life. And the great news is that this human life is the blink of an eye in the time continuum. The harsh news is this life is the blink of an eye in this time continuum. Because sometimes it seems like we're just getting the mojo on, we're kind of getting it, right? And wham. Not always. But it does happen, and there are those of you listening to me that know exactly what I mean. Geez, I was just getting it, and now I'm sick again. I was just getting it. The great news being, as the Buddha taught us, that we come here for a bit to play and to grow and to have our way. And at the end of this vignette of existence, we all go home to the one love, the heart and mind of all of creation, I believe anyway. And we come out again at another time to grow and to play and to be with one another in the experience of being human, and frankly, I believe other experiences in spirit as well. This is one vignette in the time continuum that we call the extraordinary life or existence. The extraordinariness of being. So what do we do when we know that we're being called into the darkest of times? We have to be with it. Jill is sharing, that's where I am right now, bless her heart. My cat Zoe of almost 19 years died in my arms 3 weeks ago, and it's been a really dark time for me. However, it's been a growing time for me as well. Oh, and you know what? That is one of the darkest nights, is when we lose one of our four-legged family members. One of our four-legged loved ones. Right? The other day I was talking about my Merlin who died on July 2nd, and I got all choked up at the dinner table again. After 15 years, right? They are part of our growth. Our animals teach us so much. They teach us so much about living, and they teach us so much about dying. They teach us so much about forgiveness and grace. Jill, I'm interested. Where do you feel in your experience that you're growing? Where has the growth come in the passing of your beloved Zoe? What do we learn in that? What do we share about that? I happen to believe that everything happens for us. It doesn't happen to us. It happens for us. And I believe the reason that things happen for us, magnificent things, mediocre things, and what we might consider dreadful, dark times things, happen for us so that we can help others through the same. We can help others by expressing what we've been through. How many times have you perhaps shared a bit of your dark night of the soul story, everyone out there? And it was exactly what somebody else needed to hear. It was exactly what somebody else needed for their own growth. One thing about walking through the dark night, walking through the shadow, I believe is that, and as you get older anyway, but finding ourselves in the darkest places really gives us very little patience for drama, right? The piddly things in life, the BS in life. When you've walked through some tough storms, right, and you've been hit by the lightning and you've been tossed around by the thunder of life, when that storm ends, there can be very little patience for the drama of others, for the smallness, for the pettiness in life, right? Jill is saying, I'm learning that it's okay to grieve and to cry. I'm allowing myself to feel the pain of losing her because I know my grief is a symbol of how much I loved her. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. It is okay to grieve and cry. And sometimes we learn that later in life. I grew up in a household where we were punished if we cried, which never really made sense to me. But if I found myself crying about something, I would, quote unquote, be given something to cry about. And that usually, came with some physical pain. If you want something to cry about, here, I'll give you something to cry about. And so it wasn't until I was much older that I learned that it is okay to cry. right out in public in front of other people, it's okay to grieve. That was a belief system that was shattered. And I became different. And at first, when you first discover for yourself that it's okay to cry, it's okay to grieve, it's uncomfortable. It feels very uncomfortable. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Jill. Kelly is saying, I believe the most important part of the dark times is awareness, being aware of the growth, and then paying it forward to be of service to others. Beautifully said, Kelly. Yes, good morning. Hihane washte chue. Yes, to be of service to others who are walking through that dark night. Maybe it's after we're okay with grieving that then we can pass on to somebody else and say, it's okay to cry. You don't have to remain stoic. You don't have to stuff it in and become sick because we're not letting it pass through. And yes, Kelly, those that dwell, and she's saying, and I mean dwell. Yes, my friend, oh goodness, the ones who dwell in it. And she says, and I mean dwell forever and camp there and use the dark to suck others in. Absolutely. There are those who build castles to the darkness. There are those that build shrines to their pain and suffering. And they invite all others to come to the shrine of their pain and suffering. They invite others to come and camp and roost with them in their pain, in their drama, in their suffering. And there are those that will say, oh, I'm coming to that temple, make room for me, and I'm going to sit right there with you because I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I don't do this with you or perhaps for you. Will you no longer be my friend if I'm not willing to dwell in the drama with you? Well, maybe. Right? Those that build shrines to the past and shrines to the darkness and grief and live there, live a half-life, I believe. And those that feel compelled to join them forever and ever also live a half-life. Life is for the living, I believe. I have a friend that lost her husband 8 months ago and she is dwelling in the darkness. I need to reach out to her and share this with her. Yeah, grieving is good. Oh my goodness, absolutely, we need to grieve. And I have never lost a child. I don't know what it's like to grieve. Everybody has their own process of grieving. Some people move along very quickly out of their grief. Other people, it takes them a bit longer depending on the relationship. Some people are happy when their spouse dies. I've learned that too. I've had people come to me celebrating because their spouse died. In fact, they couldn't have died soon enough, and if they'd have done it 10 years earlier, would have been even better. And then there are those lovebirds, right, that half of their life ended when their spouse passed. And they don't know who they are without their spouse. And there are waves of grief. There are times that we can be fine, and then there are other times when the grief washes over us again. Sometimes the grief comes because perhaps there was unfinished business. Perhaps there was some unkindness that happened that comes with the grief, right? There's so many things that come with grieving. It's when we take up roost in the darkness. Here's one thing I learned. It was 2 years ago. 2 years ago at family ceremonies. And it was the 1-year anniversary of the passing of my father. And I was going through the wiping of the tears ceremony. And Richard Broken Nose was the medicine man. He was the holy man that was overseeing that particular ceremony. And after he wiped our tears down, and as the ceremony was coming to a conclusion, Chris Eaglehawk was the announcer at that time. And for those of you that have a copy of my book, Prayers and Incantations to the Light, I use this quote. Chris said, our loved ones do not want us to continue to grieve. Our loved ones want us to live. Even though life without them is going to be very different, they want us to live. They do not want us to continue to grieve. They want us to live and have joy and continue on. And it doesn't mean that in those dark times, again, that we aren't washed over at times by the grief, by memories, by I wish I woulda, coulda, shouldas. Of course those are going to happen in our humanness. But in that moment when Chris said that, it made so much sense to me, and this aha moment happened, because it is true that we can drag them into the darkness of our grief, even though they are in spirit, right? When they see that we are having joy and we're making an effort to move on and move forward, it is also their joy. That I know from the experience of being a seer. It is also their joy. Our joy. In the end, we all meet up again, I believe. I know to be true. It's not that I believe it. I know it to be true. There is a difference. And so in these pauses between our lifetimes together and the pauses between our experiences in the dark, what do we do with that? Some people are forever beaten down by it. Can't go on, can't move off a dime. We have a choice as their friends, as their colleagues, as their loved ones to join them on the pity pot, as my sister Barbara says, or not, right? To be strong from where we are, to help them, understand that there is light again, and when they're willing to find the light, we will be there. But we do not wish to make ourselves sick joining them on the pity pot. Kelly is right. People do build entire campgrounds built to their woes. Camp woe is me, right? Pitch your tent and camp woe is me, and we'll talk about it every night around the campfire and every morning at coffee. We can visit Camp Woe Is Me, right? And we can roast a few marshmallows, talk about the old times, and we move on to the next camp. And what did we learn in Camp Woe Is Me? What are the stories? What are the songs? What are the lessons? What are the teachings that we're going to take with us going forward? Kelly is saying, I think that is an amazing reminder. It is an aha statement. Picturing and feeling your loved one filled with joy as life, joyful life, helps us to pass through that grief. Yes. Yes, and everyone has our own timetable for grieving. I did meet a woman one time whose son had passed away 25 or so years ago, and she was brought to me by her daughter 25 years later because her mother had never moved off of a dime, literally off of a dime, from 25 years to the day that her son passed. She's still dressed in the same clothes. Everything about her was the same. Time froze in that moment for her. And in that freezing, everyone else who loved her was frozen out of her life. She had no time. She had no warmth for her grandchildren now, right? For her other children. Her spouse had left her long ago because she froze literally in that moment. We can freeze in the darkness. And when we realize we are frozen there because perhaps a friend, someone who loves us says, I think you're frozen there, we can call for help at that time. In the darkest of times, as Albus Dumbledore says, help is always available for those who are deserving of it, as Albus said, those who need it, as he also says, and those who call for it. Help is always available. The light is always available if one remembers to switch on the light. I clearly watch too much Harry Potter, but I love those thoughts. When we find ourselves walking through the darkest of times, I always find myself thinking to myself, and what good is going to come of this? What am I going to be able to help others through? Or what am I going to learn about myself in this process? What am I going to learn about the people around me in this process? And once I'm through the process, then what do I do with my new knowledge? Right? Which has now become our wisdom. We can know a whole lot of stuff. I know a lot of people who are book smart, but don't have the common sense that God gave, right? The leaves blowing on a tree when it comes to living a human life or the journey of the soul. It hasn't become their wisdom. Their knowledge is not their wisdom. Wisdom, I believe, comes to us after walking through the shadow and back into the light of day and back into the shadow and back into the light of day. And what are we doing with what we've learned? What are we doing with who we now are? Are we honoring that? Are we hiding it for the comfort of others? Again, it's not easy when we come through the dark night and we take a look around at the friends we thought would be there, who disappeared, the family members we thought would be there who disappeared, or the colleagues who disappeared, and those that have risen to the occasion of the next upon our soul's journey. And those that we outgrow, or those that outgrow us, because sometimes people outgrow us on this journey of life. What do we do about that? We love them from where we are. Hopefully they're loving us where they are. Carla Jo the other night, Carla Jo Worth said something beautiful. In her full moon and new moon ceremonies, she also releases herself, gives permission for herself to be released from the lives, from the circles of those who no longer need her. I am ready to be released from friends, from family, from the circles of those who no longer need me in their life or upon this journey. So often we think about who has been released from our life. But what about giving ourselves permission to be released from the lives of those that no longer need us in their journey? I've been thinking about that clearly since last Thursday night. That bit of wisdom that she has shared. Yeah. My sister Del Marie is weighing in. Long time ago, death was welcomed as it should be. The quote, "It is a good day to die." Death was accepted and honored. It was logic. Yesterday, although, I was saddened by memories of my marriage anniversary. I was needed by others yesterday. Felt like I had a label on my forehead that said, "I'm here for you nevertheless," helping and listening to others. My pain and sadness was lessened just to help others. Sure didn't dwell in my darkness, LOL. Del, I've never known you to be a woman who dwells on the pity pot or in your darkness, and you are always a woman of service, even in your darkest times. That is your wisdom that you shine. I have never known you, ever in all of these years. Instead, you offer your sadness, your experience, and your wisdom of grief and sadness from one of the darkest times in your life to help others find the light, to regain their joy. And I believe that that's the purpose of why the brightest lights are called into the darkest places. Because there are places, there are situations, there are teachings, there is knowledge. There is knowledge that will never be wielded by a dim bulb. It has to be wielded and understood by a bright light. Wisdom is gained from knowledge that has become an experience. Right? We may have knowledge of death, but we don't have the wisdom of death until we've walked through it. We may have the knowledge of illness, but we don't have the wisdom of illness until we've walked through it. We know about pain and suffering, but we do not have the wisdom of pain and suffering unless we have walked through it. And pain and suffering have different meanings to some people. To some people, pain and suffering is when the cleaning lady isn't there on time and doesn't do a good enough job of cleaning around the toilets. For some people, I've had clients like this, that is pain and suffering. That is their level. It is real for them that the cleaning lady is not as good as she used to be. I have clients whose pain and suffering comes when their child is not selected for an exclusive preschool or elementary school. That is absolutely painful, excruciating, end-of-life circumstances when their child is not accepted into an exclusive school and when they and their husband are not admitted into an exclusive country club. That is the greatest degree of pain and suffering for some people, and it is real for them. Pain and suffering comes in many degrees, right? And what do we do with it? Hey, Tara. Good to see you in the house this morning. There's somebody who's walked through a few dark nights. Tara Rietberg. Right? What do you do with that? If you choose to do nothing, I happen to believe that the experience is wasted. The teaching is wasted. If you don't extend a hand, if you don't share a conversation, write about it, or at least become a more compassionate person. Sometimes, people are not built to reach out and extend a hand or to be of service, but at least perhaps their light can become brighter, their wattage can become sturdier, right? You don't have to walk around like Eeyore. One of the things that I've learned is that some of the brightest lights that I know are the people that have walked through the greatest pain and suffering. And how do I know that? I know it because of their heart of compassion, because of the degree of the light that they now wield and shine. That's how I know. Perhaps it's the wrinkles on their face or the gray streaks in their hair, their laughter, their zest for life. Oftentimes that can tell me about just how deep and dark that night of the soul was. Yeah. With that, everybody, Kelly, have a beautiful day. Thank you all for following me here on Spreaker. Click that little follow button and you'll get notifications of shows that are upcoming. Del Marie will be on live next week, depending if she's here in Michigan to help us with the Native American Education Program Christmas party. It may be next Wednesday rather than Tuesday. She's still trying to sort out flights. Thank you for visiting DeniseIwana.com at the School of Sacred Studies. We've got new courses listed, virtual courses that you can enjoy from the comfort of your home. Other courses that will be here through the winter months and into 2019. You can take a look at that, DeniseIwana.com. There's now a separate site that's listed there for the School of Sacred Studies. I hope you enjoy that. There's also a separate site for Temple Within Radio and Media. If you go to DeniseIwana.com, they're on the homepage. They're all listed. So you can listen to all of the shows from all of our wonderful hosts here. I'd like to wrap up the show by honoring all of you and the darkness that you've walked through, the tough times that you've walked through in order to hone and to share your light at the wattage that you shine it. Jill is saying, I signed up for the course starting in January. Oh, good. Did you get a PayPal confirmation of payment, Jill? Yes, I did receive it. And as soon as I go in and I create the space for all of us to log in, everyone will receive an email giving you login information and all of that good stuff. But as long as you received a receipt from DeniseIwana.com through PayPal or Wix stores, I did receive it. And thank you for signing up. And thank you for mentioning it, Jill. I am doing a fun course through the winter months called the Seers Series. For those of you that are wanting to hone your own gifts of the Spirit, your clairsentience, your clairvoyance, your clairaudience, all the clairs, I'm going to be doing what I call yoga for seers, right? So it's called the Seers Series. And whether you can attend live or not, everyone who registers for the 3-month series will receive the recording, which is video recording. And so you can enjoy the exercises over and again, opening up and balancing all of your gifts, all of your charismatic gifts, the gifts of the Spirit, clear sight, clear hearing, clear feeling, clear knowing, all of those. So please do visit DeniseIwana.com and go to the School of Sacred Studies to register. And again, you get to do it from the comfort of your own home, whether you do it live or you watch the video and recording when I send it to you afterward, or both, right? Once you sign up, you receive the recording regardless. So it's going to be a great deal of fun. Also, this evening, Angelology, the Archangel Saint Raphael, virtual Angelology from 7:30 until 9 via Zoom. Zoom is my preferred way of teaching. Gets it off of social media. And also in January, I will be teaching a virtual class in the Archangel Metatron. That one ought to be really extraordinary. I happen to be a huge fan of Metatron. So again, check it out. All of the details are there. DeniseIwana.com, School of Sacred Studies. My Chue Del Marie will be here in the spring for a weekend retreat of balance, walking the Changleshka, the medicine wheel teachings, the teachings of the old ones, right? About remaining in balance, honoring womanhood and manhood and all that good sort of a thing. So with that, everybody, have a beautiful day. Get out there and shine as only you can shine. Blessings be, everyone. Sending lots and lots of love your way. Next week, we'll pick up where we left off here and celebrate the solstice. Have a beautiful day.